Your ears do not deceive you. You have just entered the Cryptid Creator Corner brought to you by your friends at Comic Book Yeti. So without further ado, let's get on to the interview.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of the Cryptid Creator Corner. I'm Byron O'Neill, your host for our Comics Creator Chat. As we continue to celebrate Women's History Month here on the show with my Women in Comics feature, it was an absolute no-brainer to reach out to returning guest Ringo nominated Erica Schultz. Erica is taking over shelves lately, being the first woman to write Spawn and Rat City, reimagining Hell's Kitchen's own mass vigilante Daredevil with Woman Without Fear and Unleash Hell, the Red Band edition, going all slash in the city with Laura Kinney Wolverine, and expanding the adventures of Hallow's Eve with Blood Hunters. Erica, it's always nice to catch up a bit. How you been?
I've been okay. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for coming on. Well, I want to start with reading the room in 2025. When I reached out about setting up a Women in Comics feature, what emotion did that elicit? Yay, or oh, depression? Where are we at representationally now in the media?
I mean, there's a point at which I would love it that being a woman in comics isn't like a novelty,
Yeah.
but at the same time, I will admit that being on the Women in Comics panel at San Diego and looking across at this like sea of people was a pretty nice ego boost.
Yeah, I bet.
Um,
I bet.
but women have always been in comics from the beginning. It's just, Ramona Fradon and, Marie Severin and, all these artists and editors and colorists, Chrissy Shigo, and I know I'm mispronouncing that, sorry. It's just funny that it's one of these things where it's like, oh, women are only now in comics. It's like, no, they're not only now in comics. We've always been in comics. I think that's kind of what bothers me sometimes when people say like, there was no women in media in, the 80s and 70s. I was like, we had Wonder Woman, we had the Bionic Woman, we had um Princess Leia, we had Scarlet Lady J Cover Girl, we had the mom and the sister from Bionic 6. And I'm like, there were plenty. I mean, all of them were white, basically, but there were
Right.
plenty of women on your television screen. It was just a matter of, you know, whether or not you sort of saw yourself in it. But I don't know. I don't know what I'm talking about.
Well, I want to go back and actually watch Bewitched because that's more of a beloved childhood show for me. And in my brain, I'm thinking that there was a lot of subversive stuff going in there, but I don't. I need to go back and watch it because I can't actually confirm that. I want to make it out to be okay. This was a woman in power. She had the magic, but she was forced to be kind of the domestic and the mom and everything and juggling all these different things. So I'm hoping it was actually as powerful a statement as my brain makes it
I
out
mean,
to
well,
be.
think of Mary Tyler Moore show. You think about that, and it was this like, you're gonna make it after all, kind
Yeah.
of thing. And was she the feminist icon? Yeah, but what is it about being a headliner that made her the feminist icon? Look at Maude. I mean, there's been plenty of women on our TV screens, the film screens. It's just I think everything I think people want everything to be absolutely 100% checking all the boxes of their expectations for something, whether it's, something feminist or something whatever. I mean, the Bechdel test is something that is constantly, used as a comparison and sort of every piece of media you hold up to that. Um, but I think that I think the fact that these women were leading shows in terms of as characters. And in Mary Tyler Moore's show, I believe she was actually writing for the show as well. I'm not entirely sure, so please don't quote me on that. I'm gonna have some like television historian jump on me for that. But in those cases, I mean, having a lead like Bionic Woman and things like that, that in and of itself, I think, is a step in the right direction. And that happened 40 years ago, almost 50 years ago. I mean, Bionic Woman came on in what, like 75, 76, give or take. Wonder Woman, I mean, even that one Wonder Woman where she was blonde and she ran around in a tracksuit.
Well, I was doing a little research with comics specific media, and the ratio of female representation at both Marvel and DC combined, we're looking at somewhere around 20%, 27% in
Yeah.
the characters. Looking at the creator specific lens, CBR had a fantastic piece recently. Comics are still failing their female creators. I'll put a link in the show notes for anyone that's interested. It's a great article. But it cited that in April 2024, among artists and writers, that only 11.5% were women, which seems kind of unfortunately plausibly accurate to extrapolate that kind of in general. So it's fair to say if that's fairly low and that the numbers are pretty grim. It seems like there's encouraging signs, though. I mean, you talked about, being in San Diego and seeing a sea of people, which gave you some positive vibes. So how do we create more opportunities for women and femme presenting creators?
I think that we need people who have half of the ear of an editor because, to be perfectly honest, editors don't listen to you as much as you think that they do. But I think that you should say to your editor, suggest female and femme presenting artists and collaborators and such because that's important. I mean, the one reason why we have Jetta Vizo and Rochelle Rosenberg on art duties on Laura Kinney Wolverine is because when I spoke to the editor and they came to me and said, we'd really love for you to do a Laura Kinney series because we liked what you did with the X-23 flashback series. I said I would like. Now it was not an edict. I know there's some rumors going around that I stomped my feet, had a tantrum, kicked up the fuss. No, that was not the case. But I said, if this is a story about a young 22-year-old woman, give or take 22, in New York City, I would love and I would really want to have uh, all female creators and or femme presenting creators on this book because there is something about a shared experience that women have
Mhm.
that will be imbued in this book that won't it won't come through if you have a bunch of male creators on the book. And you could have the most feminist dude on the planet, but everything is still going to be skewed to that male gaze. And it's not,
Sure.
and that's science, you know? Um, so we have Elena Casagrande doing A covers. We have Jetta Belviso doing the line art, and we have Rochelle Rosenberg doing the colors. And I have an all-male editorial team on this book. And there are times that I would write something in the script, and there would be confusion, and that the editors would say, "Oh, well, this character is coming off as very aggressive." And I always have to take a step back before responding to those, emails because I'm like, "Well, in your perception, she is aggressive. However, due to the circumstances of which she is in, she is actually reacting, you know, pretty calmly, all things considered." Um, and so it's kind of difficult sometimes because, like we said before, that there are expectations that people have on women. We are, as women, are expected to be helpful. We are expected to be compliant. We are expected to be all of these things. That if for whatever reason we do not have that attitude, then there's something wrong with us. Or we have an attitude, we have we're being bitchy, bossy, fill in, whatever,
Yeah.
adjective you want to use. Um, and I mean, this is things that I constantly talk with other creators about, this idea of, you know, Laura specifically, is she too aggressive? Is she too this? Is she too that? She is a woman who was born in a test tube in a lab and forced to have knives in her hands and her feet. I don't know about you, but I would have a chip on my shoulder too.
Oh yeah. Well, I always thought it was wild that you had her very expression is in being a female is really the result of 22 lab tests that were unsuccessful. So that's where X23 even comes from.
Yes.
So
And and when you read her origins, 22 unsuccessful lab tests were all males.
right.
And every embryo is a female until there's this boost of hormone that switches the double X to an XY, which then turns the embryo male. So Sarah Kinney, who was the geneticist and Laura's last name comes from Sarah, she said, "I'm going to try something." And guess what? It worked. And the other people that were in the lab were really, really pissed because they wanted Logan. They wanted a man. And I have to wonder if two things. One, they wanted to quote punish Dr. Sarah Kinney. So they made her take Laura and have Laura gestate inside of her. And that was her punishment, which I thought was disgustingly cruel, but that's beside the point. But I think that they worked Laura even harder because deep down they were upset that it wasn't Logan. They were upset that they had a young girl instead of a young boy. And here's this girl, and girls can't be aggressive, and girls can't be this, and girls can't be that. And that's why I think that she was probably tortured harder than if she had been a boy. Because it wasn't just, we're putting you through your paces to make sure that you're hardened enough. It's, we're putting you through your paces and we're punishing you for being who you are. She was 7 when she went through the adamantium process. That's pretty crazy.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, to me, first of all, I love this book. It's one of my favorite Marvel titles running right now. It feels like the perfect comic of the moment to me because you have a very strong, powerful woman dropped smack dab in the middle of this culture conflict in America with the anti-mutant sentiment, which in our real world, there's a backlash happening against all things deemed as other right now. So in terms of the guiding light with her, is that pain? Is that fear? What you wanted to expand upon? What's the nucleus of the character to you?
Um, it's growing. It's growing up. Laura has never had a normal life. When people say, "Oh, she's just the female Logan," she's not. Logan had a normal childhood.
Yep.
In the 1800s, Logan had a normal childhood. Logan is also well over 150 years old. And being over 150 years old means that he has had the actual time to reconcile his life, to reconcile who he is, where he's been, where he's going, who he wants to be, etc. Laura has not had that. And Laura did not have any foundation of um, of caring. There was absolutely no foundation for any love, any caring, sense of any sense of normalcy, any sense of any type of way to have to teach somebody to be a normal and productive member of society. All right. So not only does Laura have to learn how to control her anger and rage, her justifiable anger and rage, not only was Laura tortured by other women, Kamara specifically, all right, um, but Laura also has been othered in more ways than one. She's been othered as a woman. She's been othered as a mutant. And there are definitely some lessons that Laura will learn, especially about how not every mutant is, rah rah chest beating, mutant and proud. Um, and there are some allies that Laura does not recognize as allies because Laura herself has the blinders of othering other people. So she's a little hypocritical. And I think that that makes her real. I think that makes her more relatable because, I mean, as much as people don't want to admit, we are all 100% hypocrites. There's plenty of things that we will say, I will die on this hill. And then, you know, the next day we do something that totally contradicts that statement. So I get it. Um, and so when some people will say to me as a critique, "Well, Laura wouldn't do that." All right, have you been a 22-year-old woman living in New York as a mutant? I haven't been a mutant, but I've been a 22-year-old woman living in New York City. And I can tell you right now, I would tell myself A in the morning, and by the evening, I would have gone through C, D, E, and F, skipping B. Um, Life is contradictory. Life will throw you crazy curves and you have to, and like at Rat City, the tagline of Rat City is adapt or die, you know? So you have to find your way through. And being a young woman, she's finding her way through anyway. She's 22 years old. Technically, she is a legal adult. If I if I turned around and had a conversation with my 22-year-old self, I would turn around and say, "You think you know everything. You know maybe 7% of what you're supposed to know, if that."
Yep.
And that's why the matchup with Elektra is so interesting because I wrote the matchup with the two of them as if me, as a 48-year-old woman, was having a conversation with my 22, 21-year-old self.
Okay.
And it is aggressive and angry, um, but it's also a way of Laura telling Elektra, "I'm not as dumb as you think I am," and Elektra telling Laura, "You're not as smart as you think you are,"
Right.
and this back and forth. And I think that that's important, because we are constantly learning. I think that when you say, "I know everything I need to know," no, you don't, because especially in the current climate, something is going to happen that you could not have fathomed or expected, and you're gonna have to learn how to navigate the world a whole new different way.
Yeah, I know if I went back and had a conversation with the 20-year-old version of me, the 20-year-old version of me, A, would hate the 50-year-old version of me because I would think I was weak. And then the 50-year-old version of me would say, you just don't have a concept of actually what strong really is.
Yeah,
Um,
and
so,
our perceptions are
go ahead.
so different at that age because because we don't have the life experience to compare things to, you know? I mean,
Yeah.
this is totally wildly off topic, but I promise you it'll come around. We took one of the cats to the veterinarian, and the vet, this was a new vet, at the same place that we went to, but she was a new vet, very, very young, like straight out of college kind of thing. And we were discussing the type of food that we were feeding the cat. And she went on this diatribe about how this is the wrong food and this, that, and the next thing, blah, blah, blah. And it's not that I disagree with her. She is the trained person. I am not. But when I had a conversation with one of the other vets, I had mentioned some of the suggestions that she had, and the other vet was like, "Well, I understand what she's saying, but it's not a monolith." You know, yes, certain cats shouldn't be on X, but there's never been in this cat's history anything to tell us that she shouldn't be on this. So, whereas technically she's right, she doesn't have enough experience as a veterinarian. She hasn't had enough patience with a TS to be able to say, this patient is not a candidate, that patient is. So when you're 22 years old, see, I told you I'd bring it back. Um, you don't have enough experience to navigate situations. You don't have enough experience to say, this is how I should react to this, or this is why I'm reacting to it, because you have nothing to compare it to.
Right.
Like he's saying, telling your young self, you don't know what strength is, you don't know what true strength is because they haven't been tested the way current you has been tested.
Right.
Um, and I think that that's important. I think people need to remember that. I think people need to realize that. For all the talk that people have about giving yourself grace and everything, like, you need to realize that you don't know everything. So,
Well, that mentorship role between Elektra and Laura is about as an entrenched a trope in comics as one can expect to see.
yes.
Typically, though, we don't see that with two women, which I think what makes this special because it's flipping much of the script on its head. Usually we would see Logan and in that mentorship role, the old man. So what made The Woman Without Fear the logical choice aside from, hey, I'm writing these two big Marvel properties with female leads, let's smash them together?
Well, I mean, there's a laziness to it, I admit. The fact that I had Electra barking in my head, and I wanted to make it easier that I wasn't gonna start, writing Laura like Electra and vice versa. So if I brought Electra in, then I would be able to, keep her voice consistent between Unleash Hell and Wolverine, but also continue to work with Laura. The other thing is that you're right. This idea of having a mentorship between two women is rarely seen because women are always shown that other women are going to be your competition for male attention, and Electra is probably one of the most confident people on the planet. Even she doubts herself. I mean, there's a conversation, um, at the end of issue number 3, which is, Elektra has a 2-issue arc with Laura, where, Laura says, "I regret some of the things I've done," and Elektra said, "We all do. Whether we admit it or not is a different story because we all have to put on this, brave face. We're heroes. We have to put on this brave face." But it's natural to worry about your conscience. It's natural to worry about the things that you're doing and the things that you've done. But the idea is that you need to acknowledge what you did and just try and be better. And that's kind of Laura's thing here is to try and be better. And, I know it's an odd matchup, Laura and Bucky, but there are definite similarities between the 2 of them. Laura obviously, trained in a lab, Bucky not, but Bucky then turned into this, mindless soldier as Laura was. Um, and, Bucky in this role of Winter Soldier, well, now the Revolution, and him having to, unfreeze, do your mission, come back. Laura had nothing aside from the mission, especially when they used the, trigger spend. So she's she's seeing people who have been through similar stuff as she has,
Right.
and she's starting to slowly realize, 1, she's not the only person in the world who's done this, and 2, it is possible to get out of it, to move on and to heal, and it takes a lot of time, but you have to be patient with yourself. Um, and so these are the lessons that she's going to learn, or that I hope she learns. It depends on what editorial says.
Well, where I connected with it was specifically in issue 2, and this is the thing that just solidified the strength of the series to me, which was no one deserves to be used as a weapon.
Yep.
And that's kind of what you're talking about with Laura and Bucky, and that through line of those people and how they've been abused in the past. And it's all kind of wrapped up in what I'm grappling with personally as people are being weaponized in society. And really, they just want to go about their lives. They want to be left alone, but they don't have the opportunity to do it because there's a lens that's on top of them. And at issue 2, spoiler alert, okay, the kid is an actual bomb.
Yes.
Um, but why was that something specific? Is that part of the growth that you're just trying to work through the character? The time constraint is what makes it feel like the a crucible, and that rage that I think is absolutely merited, that I hope editorial lets you do, feels like the center to me.
I'm glad that you picked up on the analogy that I was trying to put as, using Anthony as a literal weapon.
Yeah,
But this idea of there are people in this world, specifically queer people, trans people, who are being their existence is being weaponized and being
right.
used for misinformation, etc. And um and like you said, they just want to live their lives. So that, statement of nobody should be used as a weapon is more than just nobody should be brainwashed and sent off, to go kill a bunch of people. It's nobody's existence should um should warrant being manipulated and misinformed and turned into propaganda, weaponization of culture war, all of that stuff. And that was the statement that I was trying to make. Um, but using Anthony, who his mutant ability is he is a literal bomb. He explodes and then reconstitutes. Um, Using that as sort of a, superhero comic book way of saying it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. As an anthropologist, I'm always looking for interesting little pieces of material culture, and I absolutely locked on to the letters left at the treehouse. These are these archaic pieces, really, of material culture right now in our world, and it's just an interesting choice to me. I've been actually thinking about getting a typewriter and reconnecting with people in a more personal way. Like, letters are intimate, and using that as a way of these people who are hurting, trying to reach out. What was appealing about using that as a piece of connective tissue in the story specifically?
I wanted it to be like, um, kind of like the Wailing Wall where people put prayers in there.
Okay.
There was also there was in a few episodes of a TV show called Longmire. I don't know if it's from the books, but people would go to this wall and they would put prayers in a jar, and it would be sort of this avenging angel would go pull out, you know, my husband is abusing me, my brother-in-law's, whatever, and this avenging angel would go and set things right. And it comes down to Laura's idea of justice, like where's the justice in this world? If these people, these mutants are not getting justice for a number of reasons, least of which because they no longer have a home like Krakoa,
Yeah.
um, Laura's going to try and she's going to try to give them some type of justice. Um, and in the particular case of Emery and Yvonne, it was finding Yvonne for Emery and reuniting them and making sure that they that's one less thing they have to worry about. Worrying about where the other is, what's happening to them. That's one less thing they have to worry about because they have each other. And um that community, that being together takes one less thing, gives you hopefully hope and solace that you can then start to work toward finding a solution,
Okay.
if that makes
Well,
sense.
you're working with Yeah, it actually makes sense. You're working with Giada Belviso on the project. Previously, you collaborated on Blood Hunters, so I'm sure you've got a pretty good creative rapport going right now. Italian artists are absolutely taking over the business. Her work is has a bit of Jay Lee DNA in it to me,
A little,
and
yeah.
that includes.
Sorry, I just want to correct real quick. Jada and I did not work together on Blood Hunters.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you did.
She worked on Blood Hunters separately. I worked on
Oh,
Blood
okay.
Hunters with Bernard Chang and then with Robert Gill. Jada and I actually worked together on Women of Marvel um, last year on a quick short with Natasha Romanoff.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, no, you're good. Thank you for correcting me. I had my information wrong. There are some really fantastic close-up panels that kind of highlight Laura using her heightened senses that make it feel very tactile. Do you feel like you're hitting your stride together now 3 issues in?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Jada is finishing the art on issue number 7 right now,
Oh,
and
wow, okay.
yeah, and she is there's there's something really fun about her angles. There's something really cool about the way she sees things.
Yep.
She likes getting up close to characters because there's an intimacy in that not everybody feels comfortable with, and sometimes a panel is uncomfortable and it's supposed to be uncomfortable. It's supposed it would not be doing the job that it's supposed to be doing if it didn't sort of, make you shift in your seat a little bit. Somebody had mentioned that one of the panels in issue number 3, which came out yesterday, um, made them very, very uncomfortable. And I didn't respond to the comment because my initial response was going to be, well, then it did its job. Um, but that to me is kind of the point, is this idea of Giada is close and intimate in these people's lives, in these people's physical space, in their personal space. And that brings us as an audience so much closer to who they are. And I don't know if we've seen that a lot in comics in general. But then there's also some really, I don't know how, there's some moments that, and I know one particular moment that I absolutely just adore, but I can't talk about it yet because the book hasn't come out yet. The particular issue hasn't come out yet. But there are these moments, and sometimes they're just background moments, and sometimes they are, you know, close up, that you look and you're like, did she just? Yeah, she did. You know, when you look at the facial expressions of Elektra and how exasperated she looks sometimes when dealing with Laura. Like this idea of like, oh my God, I know that she's brilliant. I know that she is an assassin. Oh, why is she being so dumb? And
Right.
she literally says in the opening uh of issue 2, like, why do teenagers think that they know everything? And Laura's like, I'm not a teenager. It's like, yeah, but you're still a baby. Let's be honest. Like you're still young.
Right.
You're still learning. Um, and these beautiful images of Elektra and her hair. Oh my god. I love the way Giada draws both of their hair. I mean, it's like very like Phil Jimenez draws great hair, but Alisa Martinez draws great hair. Um, but I will say this, the contrast between Elektra's big, giant curls everywhere and Um, and Laura's just, like, straight hair down that's, like, stringy, but also, like, thick and lush. Giada draws great hair, and I love the way it moves in fight scenes, and we made it a point in issue number 2 to talk about how Laura fights differently than Elektra and, like, how their body physically moves differently. But also, when you look at how their hair moves. I mean, that in and of itself, like, dealing with the physics of that is like, I mean, I do not have enough art talent to be able to navigate that, but Giada does it, and it's just and it's great. And I know when Marco Cicchetto was originally drawing Elektra as Daredevil, she has this giant mane of hair. And then when I was writing Daredevil Gang War, and Sergio Davia was drawing it. He draw like there's a panel where she takes off her helmet, and the amount of hair behind her is impossible to have fit in that helmet, but it is so lush and it is so beautiful, and it's like. And I wrote the other day on social media, and somebody was like, "You're starting a fight." I was like, "Elektra has better hair than Medusa. Like, come at me for real." Like she does. So what? She can't grab the remote control and turn and change the channel with her hair, but she has better hair than Medusa. So yeah.
Well, I haven't seen issue 3 yet. I haven't been by the LCS yet this week, so I don't know what it is that specifically would be making people uncomfortable, but is there a difference when you're working with the nucleus of a female creative team? I was thinking about, so you had a bit of a glass ceiling break there, being the first woman to write Spawn
Yeah.
Rat City. And Spawn was a character that had the genesis in the male-dominated fanboy culture of the early 90s, where it was, style over substance. Female characters were hypersexualized eye candy, right? Or worse, abuse sponges, like Harley
Yeah.
Quinn was.
Yes. I'm
So
glad you said Harley
is
Quinn because I really dislike that character so, so much, and
really
I dislike Harley so much. I really
for
do.
that reason?
Just because I don't think that she's a character that should be aspired to. I mean, she has come leaps and bounds, and I love that, but when people talk about, like, how, like, they wanna be like Harley, it's like, "So you want to be a punching bag, literally and metaphorically and emotionally? Like, that's where you're going with this?" You know, I
Yeah.
and it's really very frustrating, and I know that she has evolved a great deal and everything, and I have a beautiful, watercolor print from one of my favorite artists, named Anika. She's a Spanish artist. We worked together on By Lines and Blood, and she's, like, a good friend and just is such an incredible artist, and she gave me this beautiful Harley and Poison Ivy print. Um, but my beef with Harley is this idea of, "Oh, she's so strong." Yeah, she's so strong because she was forced to be strong because her whole shtick was that she was a doormat for so long, you
Yep.
know? She could have been strong without being a doormat, you know? And, so yeah. But anyway, sorry, I digress. I
No, no, you're good. I'm not a huge Harley fan anyway, but, it was perfect, I think, as an example to just encapsulate that era. So, whatever it is that people are responding to, you're talking about hair. Is this just the nucleus of working with a female creative team, understanding how female bodies work? Is this a transition that we're seeing in comics when you have all women, except the editorial, working on a book?
hope. I mean,
Okay.
I I hope that it shows that, women tell stories differently, but they can still be mass appeal. They can still be, um, well, well, I just lost my words. Sorry. They can still be well executed. One of the things that I I remember when I first started writing comics, the first comic that I wrote was a character called M3, and I the artist that on this comic was Vicente Alcazar. He's an older gentleman who's been in the comics business for a bajillion years, and and we're talking 15 years ago when this happened. And he was in an interview, and they were asking him about coming back to comics and this and the next thing, and he said, "The Erica's the first female writer that I've worked with ever." And this is a guy who was working on Moon Knight in the 70s, you know,
Okay.
and working on Conan for Marvel when they had when they had the license back in the early 80s. And he said, "This is the first woman I've ever worked with writing." And he's had like woman colorists or, whatever, but the first woman that he picked the script up. And he said, "And there's a very big difference. And I never thought I would see it. there's a big difference between the way a woman writes a script and a man writes a script. And I think that there is a level of emotion that Erica writes with that I haven't seen in male script. And it's not just talking about writing female characters, it's just in general. And to be perfectly honest, I reread my scripts and I was like, I don't know what he's talking about. But in his estimation, the way I wrote scripts, the information that I gave him, um, that for some reason struck a chord with him in a different way than, him picking up a Jonah Hex script from whomever, you know? And I thought that that was very, very interesting, and I sort of held on to that. And whenever I work with male artists, like, it's fine. I mean, I worked with some incredibly talented and collaborative male artists, Mike Dowling and Sergio Davia that I mentioned, and Robert Gill and Edgar Salazar, like really great artists who are fantastic. But I felt like with working with Jada, and now, I'm writing issue number 9 and she's drawing issue number 7. Working with her, I kind of felt as if there was an automatic shorthand, you
Okay.
know? Like, I'll bring up Mike Dowling. Mike Dowling and I worked together on the Hallow miniseries, and then we worked together again, Daredevil Woman Without Fear. And by the time we got to Daredevil Woman Without Fear, I would say by the time we got to like issue 4 of Hallow's Eve, we had a shorthand, we had a rapport. So Daredevil Woman Without Fear was actually a quicker, easier to me because Mike knew how I wrote, I knew how Mike drew, etc. But I kind of felt like with Giada from the beginning, there was just like we were already starting on step 3. And I don't know, it could have nothing to do with the fact that we're both women. It could have everything to do with the fact that I speak Italian and I write sometimes I write anecdotes in Italian in the script to help her, or it could have everything to do with that. I don't know, but I genuinely felt like we were already a couple of steps ahead, um, working together, and I was even issue number 1. So,
Is there a danger in your mind as a writer who starts getting known for that Erica, okay, we need a badass bitch. She's gonna, you know, headline her own solo book. Well, just give it to Erica, right? Is there a danger in being typecast, to some extent?
yes and no. I mean, to a certain extent, no, because I would like some job security. I'm a freelancer.
Sure.
Um, and if I'm doing well enough and the books are resonating well enough with the audience, then why shouldn't I? Why shouldn't I keep writing these ladies? Um, I was referred to in an article as writing the quote sister books.
Okay.
Um, Saladin Ahmed is currently writing Daredevil and Logan's book, and then I'm writing, Daredevil as Elektra and Laura's book, and I was referred to as writing the sister books, and I took umbrage with that. I was like, "There's these books can exist independently of each other," and I think that you kind of I don't believe that they were that they were really saying I don't think that they were purposely saying trying to downplay the book, but
Okay.
I think that they were trying to say, when people go to the comic shop and they want Daredevil and they want Wolverine, they're looking for Matt and Logan, respectively.
Sure.
Um, but I think that and this is nothing against Saladin's work, but I think our books are strong as hell, and I think our books stand on their own, and maybe I'm shooting myself in the foot here saying this, and I'm knocking on wood right now. Um, but I think that if I hadn't done something right, if I wasn't good at what I did or professional or, um, selling enough books, then I don't see them bringing me back, you know? Because that's something that a lot of fans talk about. Like, fans think that the only metric is whether or not books sell. And that, to a certain extent, is true. I mean, that is obviously a very important metric. However, there is a lot more going on internally that people are not privy to, um, in terms of, there's politics in every office, every business. I don't care where you are.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
and in terms of what they think is gonna sell versus what does sell versus who are we gonna get to write this character, because whether or not, because maybe, this particular writer on this character is gonna sell more books than putting another writer on this character, whatever. If my job becomes from here on out, Erica's just writing the badass bitches, as he said, then fine, I'll write badass bitches. The first book I ever wrote was M3, and it was about a badass bitch. So if that
Hmm.
like, I've written plenty of other stuff. I've written Darth Maul. I wrote a horror book called 12 Devils Dancing where the lead was a queer man. I've written I mean, I wrote Deadliest Bouquet, a book for Image, which is about 3 sisters, and they're all badass, but they all ridiculously flawed. But
Yeah.
I mean, what I'm technically known for is writing Rat City, a male character in, like you said, in a very 90s heavy, uh, uh, universe, but I'm writing this male character. So if I'm just supposed to be writing badass bitches, then why is it that at least 3 issues of Rat City have gone to multiple printings?
Sure.
People are reading it. So, I obviously can write male characters,
Oh yeah.
but I don't know, I'm just talking out my ass.
Oh no. I mean, I have put it out there on social media, and I think there are a lot of people actually that agree with me that the Laura Kinney series, to me, if you look at Wolverine, big picture as more of a character archetype, I really do feel like this gets to the core of what Wolverine is than any Wolverine story that I've read in a long time.
Well, I appreciate
So
that. Um,
yeah,
I do believe that, like you said, archetypes, these characters are all some form of archetype or another, and because of that, people will connect to them or disconnect from them. Um, some people will loathe these characters. Sorry, I just got your battery's gonna die. Some people will loathe these characters and not even know why they're loathing the characters because we're pre-programmed. You know, if you want to go like all Carl Jungian, we're pre-programmed to dislike or to like this type of character. Um, and I think that to a certain extent, we as creators, writers, sometimes we want to lean into that, and sometimes we want to sort of deflect and try and change things up. But it has to all feel like it's plausible. It has to all feel like it's connected to the character, but also to the world, you know? And with character, I mean, Laura is 25 years old in terms of a character, which is crazy because I remember sitting on the floor of my really terribly crappy Brooklyn apartment watching Evolution and seeing her X-Men Evolution and seeing her emerge and be created. So the fact that she's already 25 years old is just insane to me. Um, but I think it's just a matter of, there are fans that are gonna love stuff. There are fans that are gonna hate stuff, and I the first person that I want to make happy with the stories that I tell is me. I want to make stories that I'm proud of. And I want to make stories that I'm not only proud of, but that Giada would want to draw. And I want to make stories that the powers that be, you know, will accept and, and let's be honest, and I can get paid for so I can continue making those stories.
Sure.
Um, so it's funny because if you read Unleash Hell, I actually go on the character of Muse. I use him as an analog to sort of go on a diatribe about um, the sort of not necessarily hypocrisy, but the complexity of trying to create art in such a capitalist society, trying to
Yeah.
create art and be true and be what you would consider a true artist, etc. And I was genuinely surprised that they let that diatribe through. I had a feeling that I was going to get pushback, and I didn't. I think they may have pulled one thing out, um, but the sentiment of trying to create art in a society that sees art as disposable, sees art as content, for lack of a better term, um,
Yeah.
and sees the artists as interchangeable and disposable. The idea of trying to create art for the sake of art or art for the betterment of society, art for enriching people and enriching their lives, their experiences, etc. And I don't know if you've read Unleash Hell, but
Yeah.
uh, the last
Loved it.
5 pages, that sort of epilogue slash prologue, um, sort of goes through that, and
Yeah.
that sentiment continues throughout. Issue number 2 just came out, and that sentiment with Muse still continues. Um, so I think it's important that we challenge things. Obviously, there's only so far that I can challenge being a freelancer, but
Yeah.
that's what my independent work is for. My independent work is for challenging things because there I have the freedom to say what I want or have my characters say what I want and make the statements that I feel to make. Um, some people, like I said, we were all hypocrites. Some people would consider doing something for Marvel as hypocritical, when my independent work might make different statements, but doing work for Marvel and being allowed to even slightly make statements is what's um, allowing me to then go full out with my indie work, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, it makes perfect sense. I mean, with Unleash Hell, I was sort of curious if the cinematic or the TV universe of Daredevil even opened the door sort of editorially to embrace something that is much darker as a tonal project to allow you to make a statement about artists and capitalism and that kind of thing. Because the TV series was dark, and up until that point, Daredevil didn't look like that, you know?
Yeah. And so the character of Muse, they when they came to me with Unleash Hell and they said, "We want you to do a red band," I had multiple Electra stories that I had been sort of kicking around editorial, and some bits and pieces wound up in Gang Wars, some bits and pieces wound up in Woman Without Fear. And I said, like, I'd really like to do something where we can, challenge, not just challenge Electra, but challenge this notion of, what is proper and such. And they said, like, "Well, we'd really like to use the character Muse." And I was like, "That's interesting because Muse is dead." But okay. So that then opened up the possibility of bringing in Hell and this sort of opening. I sort of have this opening monologue by Electra about, like, where did the Hell's Kitchen get its name?
Right.
And I sort of go through this fun little historical moments of, was it Dutch Fred? Was it the Irish cops? Was it this? Was it that? Um, and I sort of play with that. But the idea of allowing Elektra to be more brutal is pretty, baked in to the other stories. You just didn't see it because wearing the Daredevil outfit, Elektra promised Matt that she would not kill. And for her, it's like a little challenge for her. She actually welcomes that challenge. She says, "All right, fine, I won't kill. It'd be easy to just tear this guy's spine out. But you know what? I won't." But in Unleash Hell, it's almost like, how you see how brutal Batman can be, and you're like, "Oh god, he might not have killed that guy, but he's gonna be eaten through a straw for another 7 years." We decided that because we had the red band, go ahead, that we could be more brutal. The irony of it is that we can show somebody being literally disemboweled or decapitated, and yet I can't say the word shit.
It's weird. I admit it's a weird. I was reading a Black Label thing, and Batman or whoever the villain was, somebody couldn't curse when Batman's walking through this grotto full of impaled corpses, and I'm just, it's
Yeah.
yeah. Anyway, yeah,
Yeah, and I just think that that's like a really weird hill to die on, but
yeah, yeah.
whatever, call it comics code, call it whatever, but yeah, I thought that that was a strange hill to die on. But I mean,
For
I'm
sure.
I'm still able to have this diatribe of all people making this point is a villain, you know? And I don't want people to look at him and start sympathizing or empathizing with him. But this notion of art, commercial art versus high art, etc., is something that he dealt with in his previous iterations in the comics. So just taking that another step forward was what I was planning on doing because when you read Charles Soule was the writer with Muse. I want to say it was like 2015. When you read those, Muse definitely has this very, you know, anti-capitalist, kind of rhetoric. So I just took it and pushed it to the nth degree. And it's when you think about it, like he's in hell. He would go a little more mad than he already is. He'd get he'd go a little farther, down the rabbit hole than he already is because, when you're in hell, it's like being in prison. You have nothing to do but time. And so, he's ruminating on things, which is sort of what fueled this diatribe. So,
Yeah, I don't have the familiarity background with the characters. I need to go back and fill in and do some reading there and make sure I have everything set in the head so we can move forward and I have a better understanding before he shows up in the TV show as well. So
yes, as far as I can tell, he's alive in the TV show. But in
looks like
Unleash
it.
Hell, he's a vengeful spirit that manipulates a young woman named Morgan who feels similar to how Muse feels in terms of art and ways of expressing herself through art. But Muse takes it to obviously a sort of grisly endpoint.
Well, I don't want to keep you all day, but I want to ask you before we go, and it may be in print. I don't know because I haven't picked up the third issue yet, as I said. But I've been looking for you to answer that question of which X character do you feel the strongest connection to that they've included in all the issues right now. So either I get to break it or they have already printed it and I look like a dummy.
Um, I I believe I said I was Rogue that I felt the most connected to.
Did I
Um,
miss it? I didn't see it.
I don't
Oh.
know if it was. I don't think it was in Laura or Daredevil. I think it was in somebody else's book. I want to say it was in Uncanny.
Oh, okay. I'll have to go back and check. All right.
But yeah, I Rogue and Gambit are, they're the power couple in this house. Um, we had Rogue and Gambit action figures on our wedding cake. So we
Oh,
really,
cool.
yeah, we really love them. And Rogue is, Rogue again is another character who villain turned heroine turned, but not just like I'm a bad guy, I'm a good guy. Like there's been a lot of conflicting situations with her, and just the fact that um her power, the inability to get close to someone, both emotionally, physically, etc. I think that she's a really great character, and I love what Gail and Dave Marquez are doing on Uncanny right now, where Rogue is basically
Yeah.
like the leader of the New Orleans, group of X-Men. I think it's really great, and Gail and Dave Marquez are really a fantastic um, paired up on that book. I mean, really, I love that book, and I get to see
Yeah,
a
it's
couple of issues ahead of time, so I can tell you right now, there's good stuff coming in that book.
nice. Yeah, it's really good. Rogue's another character that actually her roots feel kind of visually stuck in the 90s, with it's a TNA look for sure.
Yeah, but I think she has a TNA look, but it's I believe that it's to subvert the Southern Belle, like the proper Southern Belle.
Yeah.
Um, and that's kind of where I think she's trying to sort of break out of the expectation of that. And also, it's to show her confidence in it and not, for lack of a better term, not to be slut shamed, you know? And especially in the current Uncanny, she and Remy are just very open. They are very affectionate physically toward each other. They don't care if anybody sees them kissing up on each other. Like, they are proud of their relationship. They are proud of, their sex lives. They are proud of all of that. And I think that that's sort of a banner that not a lot of people, I think whenever anybody talks about a woman being um, sexual but on her own terms, it's never on her own terms. It's always like in comics, like she's being sexualized either by the male creator or by other characters. Whereas in this, Rogue is like, yeah, I'm hot. My husband's hot. We like each other. We have sex. Like, woo! What a
Yeah.
surprise. And the fact that they are sort of out and loud and proud, I think is a departure from this idea of like feeling shame about, having physical feelings for somebody and things like that. And even when, in the past in Rogue and Remy's relationship, they would have this idea of like, oh, Remy, our relationship can't be like this because I can't touch you. And yeah, some people would say, "Oh, well, that doesn't matter." It's like, but to some people it does, and it shouldn't be shamed for that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, they feel like actually the healthy couple
Yeah.
image in Marvel, because most of the X relationships are just
Trash.
dumpster fire.
Trash fires,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, anything else you got coming down the pipe that we should know about? You got cooking in 2025?
Okay, so Laura number 4 comes out this month because this is going out in March, right?
Yes.
Yes, and that is the first issue of a 2-issue arc with Bucky Barnes. We have Rat City number 12, which is in March, which is a full year of working on Spawn Rat City, which is a pretty cool milestone for me.
Congrats. That's awesome.
Thank you. And we also have Daredevil Unleash Hell number 3, which is the halfway point of this 5-issue mini. And yeah, I mean it's going to be a hell of a ride. That's all I can say.
Well, I am here for it. Where can people find you online these days?
So on social media, I'm Erica Schultz 42 on everything except for Instagram. There I'm Erica Schultz Writes, WRITES. My website is also ericaschultzwrites.com, where you can pick up comics. I sign everything and ship it to you. And yeah, I'm on PixelFed, Blue Sky. I'm still on Twitter. I know I'm slowly migrating away. And I'm on Instagram, which again I'm also slowly migrating away from. And with luck, by I don't know, maybe the fall, I should probably just be off all meta things. So
It takes a while.
it does.
We're feeling that ourselves. Yeah,
It
yeah. I
does.
mean, everything's so connected on that. I had such I was shutting down my Facebook account, my personal Facebook account, and I was like, wait a minute, I'm connected to my neighborhood page on here and this gardening thing that I do. Yeah, it's tough.
It
So
is. It is. I and again, like we talked about, being hypocrites. I mean, I'm so anti meta and yet I still have an Instagram. So you can call me a hypocrite for that and I will admit it. So
I mean, you gotta pay the bills. I don't. I mean, anybody who really hates on that and doesn't understand that creatives have to be out there. You have to make yourself available to be found these days, and
yeah,
you know,
I know.
yeah.
It's this sort of there's a I try and lessen the amount of hypocritical things that I do, but again, we're humans. We are nothing if not walking contradiction.
Yes. Well, I'll put a link in the show notes. Go check out Erica's website because I think since the last time we talked, you got an upgrade there. There's a really nice splash video that's
Yes,
really cool. That
my
kind of
husband is a film and television editor, and he put together a very cool EPK video for me. So
it's rocking. That's one of the best I've seen. Good job. All right. Well, Erica, it's always a pleasure having you on. I appreciate the education of the realities of the business. So thank you.
thank you, Byron.
Yeah. Before we sign off, if you've enjoyed today's chat, it's offering playtime. We have a Patreon with some exclusive content. If you are interested in dropping in a little tithe, starts at $1 a month. So I'll put a link in the show notes there. This is Byron O'Neill, and on behalf of all of us at Comic Book Yeti, thanks for tuning in, and we will see you next time. Take care, everybody.